Hi, welcome to an episode of Unscripted on Anchor Reviews. It's just me, Tyler, from Anchor Reviews, just me today. And because it's around Halloween time, I feel like this was the best time to talk about a Halloween-related kind of show that also recently ended. And this one is, of course, Penny Dreadful. Penny Dreadful was a gothic horror series on Showtime that lasted from 2014 to 2016. It was written and created by John Logan, who wrote some of my favorite movies like The Last Samurai and The Aviator, and he wrote and created the show, which is really cool. Now, the plot to the show takes place in Victorian London during the late 1800s, and it centers around this woman named Vanessa Ives, played by Eva Green, and she has these kind of supernatural related powers, but also has like I'm trying to remember exactly how they explain it, but she's basically, I guess, the key to the end of days, the apocalypse, and so on. And, I mean, it's not really much of a spoiler, they kind of show that in the first season. And she's played by the lovely and talented Eva Green, and then she's accompanied by a guy named Ethan, played by Josh Hartnett, who's like the sharpshooter. We've got Sir Murray, played by Timothy Dalton. In addition, they also have Dr. Frankenstein, played by Harry Tettaway. And also we have other characters that are introduced, such as Samine, played by Danny Sapani, who is the assistant to Sir Murray. Eventually we have an actress, Billy Pipper, or Piper Pipper. Sorry, I'm not the best with names. As a woman named Lily, who I will get back to eventually. And we have other characters I will get to, so on. Now, the show itself was legitimately scary. I love the atmosphere. I love all the gothic atmosphere that this show had. I mean, this show was loosely based off the Penny Dreadful stories that were written around this, time where it takes place at. A Penny Dreadful is kind of like a short story that was like horror and gothic. But this show itself is on Showtime, so we gotta see a lot of violence, swearing, blood, sex, nudity. But that's, it makes the show more mature. But the writing and everything else in the acting is what really made this show very, very, very excellent. I'm just going to start off with Eva Green, who plays the main character in the show. I know I said Eva Green is a talented actress and really good actress, but my god, this is hands down her best acting I have ever seen. I'm kind of afraid this might be her best acting because this is the one show that she has been on for the longest time that lasted this long. I mean, she was on Camelot, where she was on there, but she did play another, important character on that show, but that show only lasted one season, and this show lasted a lot longer, and she got not just better dialogue, and this show is better than Camelot. Again, she plays a very emotionally disturbed person who is very dark, which is pretty much what Eva Green does best. But again, you do feel really sorry for her about this kind of curse she has on her. In fact, there's this one episode where most of the episode takes place in her being in an insane asylum in, a padded room. Pretty much she and some other people who are, kind of there from time to time, but she carries most of the weight in that episode. And there's other episodes in each season that have that, where she can definitely hold an entire episode by herself. So we see her going to being very vulnerable to very strong and vicious at the same time. In fact, there's an episode early on in the season where she gets possessed and says some of the most vulgar and crass things I've ever heard any character say. I'm going to play a little clip, but just want to let you know that if you have any kids, just don't let them watch this at all, okay?
I wonder when was the moment you knew you wanted to fuck her? I look into his eyes and they are red with blood like from Peter's ass. His lips are red like blood from her cunt when you fucked her.
But besides Eva Green's character, I want to talk about the other cast. We have Ethan, played by Josh Hartnett, and it's been a long time since we've seen Josh Hartnett in anything that was at least kind of mainstream. I mean, I kind of joked that he was kind of like Cuba Gooding Jr. back in the early 2000s, where they thought, oh, he's going to be like the next big actor, but he kind of dropped out of the spotlight for a while, and then he made a comeback. They both made a comeback on television. With Josh Hartnett, it was this show, Penny Dreadful. And with Cuba Gooding Jr., I think it was The People versus O.J. Simpson or something like that. But I also like that he was the only American in the group in the recurring cast in the show and the series. I liked how he was a sharpshooter. He was very effective at killing, but at the same time, he had his own mysterious past. And I will have a spoiler section near the end of this, so I'll get to that, where I can really talk about his character a lot more in detail. But anyway, we got Sir Murray, played by Timothy Dalton. I do think this is definitely one of his best acting. I didn't really care for him as James Bond back in the day, but I do feel like, age has definitely made him a better actor. I feel like that's where he does best, in a way. I mean, yeah, he had a cool, beard going on. He rocked that beard and that sort of thing. But yeah, again, this is his best acting that I've seen from him. Now, I've seen movies with him besides the James Bond movies that he was in, such as The Rocketeer and Hot Fuzz, where he's gotten better and better through time. This is definitely his best acting. With Dr. Frankenstein, I would say that it was kind of interesting that we saw him a little bit more younger. I mean, he really wanted to make a new, nice creation, but also he really wanted to, I guess, have a woman for himself, which, we're going to introduce to a new character who's Lily, played by Billy Pepper Peeper. I really messed that up, sorry. But she eventually becomes I guess you can say, the bride of Frankenstein. But before I get to that actress, that character, I should talk about the Frankenstein monster played by Roy Kinnear. This is probably one of the best Frankenstein monsters I have ever seen in any media, period. I mean, I think it was Robert De Niro who played the Frankenstein monster in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. He was fine, but I just felt like, such a big, well-known actor was a bad choice to cast as the Frankenstein monster. I mean, it worked when Boris Karloff played the Frankenstein monster back in the day because Boris Karloff was unknown at the time, so that's why it worked. And Roy Kinnear is not a very well-known actor, so I felt like casting him, such an actor that is not that well-known, as the Frankenstein monster was great. I really liked how he was all pale, he had stitches on him, but at the same time, he could kind of blend to society if he wanted to. But what's interesting is that in the first season, they kind of tease with, oh, is this the Frankenstein monster? But he has a different name, I think it was Adam. And it was kind of interesting, but then suddenly we see that character just ripped in two, and then we see the real Frankenstein monster. That was a big shock, but at the same time, it was a great reveal for the Frankenstein monster. I also like that throughout the show, he also interacts with, I'm just going to call her the Bride of Frankenstein because of the fact I just keep messing up that actress's name. She turns from being, okay, I'm part of Dr. Frankenstein's affection, but, he's like, oh, I want her to be my mate. And then she just becomes a very cruel person. Not only does she encourage violence and is okay with violence, but at the same time, she says some really awful things to the Frankenstein monster.
You pathetic creature. How can you imagine that I could care for you? Shall we wander the pastures and recite your fucking poetry to the fucking cows? You are blind.
Yeah, I really hate her too. In fact, later on, she forms her own posse of women to start killing a bunch of other men.
We must be bloody or nothing else. Rise up. Rise up. Find him and bring me his right hand. Cut it off and hold it bleeding to your breast. Bring it here. Fling it on this table and we shall sing out our joy.
Well, it's not that much different from your typical Hillary Clinton rally. But speaking of the Bride of Frankenstein, I feel like I should talk about her protege for a while named Dorian Gray, played by Reeve Carney. But yeah, I felt like he was a good Dorian Gray. I mean, I was kind of disappointed that we never saw his portrait because, he's based off the, Dorian Gray character from the Portrait of Dorian Gray or something like that. But again, he's that kind of character who's young forever as long as his painting, his portrait, remains perfectly fine. Sadly, we never really saw anyone coming across that portrait of his or that him being in danger. So I feel like he was kind of a filler character when, something not important was going on. They're like, okay, we're just going to cut to Dorian Gray. That's something I just realized right now. A lot of filler stuff in this show was like, oh, we need a filler section. Okay, we're just going to cut to Dorian Gray or something like that. So now I think I should break it down to the 3 seasons of the show. Now the first one's about, vampires, and we see kind of Dracula. And then the second season is about witches trying to get with Vanessa. I think the head, witch character is played by Helen McCurry. But I did like how she was manipulating Sir Murray from time to time. And what was interesting too is that in the witches' full form is that they're in their complete birthday suits, but they're scarred. And again, interesting, but not the typical ones of portraits if you see of witches where they're really old and they've got, really sagging skin and that sort of thing. That would be disgusting too. But then the third and final season was like, okay, we got just one witch character, and then we have Dracula in the show in the third season that is introduced. And the introduction to Dracula is this.
Look at me. Give me your neck. My name is Dracula.
I had goosebumps, but I also had a big smile on my face with that reveal. What's interesting too is that he did get with Vanessa because he wants her for her power. It was pretty interesting how he did manipulate his way to Vanessa, but at the same time it was kind of like, Bram Stoker's Dracula, where Dracula's kind of get with Mina's character, but this is not Mina, this is Vanessa. But anyway, here's my spoiler segment where I talk about some very spoiler heavy stuff in this show, and I also will talk about some problems I had with it. So here's the spoiler stuff for the stuff I really liked. One is the fact that I really love that not only was it revealed that Ethan's real name is Lawrence Talbot, aka Larry Talbot from The Wolfman, but he's a werewolf too. I also really like that his werewolf makeup looked like the werewolf makeup from Werewolf of London. So it looked a little bit more old school looking and, again, looked very intense, intimidating, and, gothic at the same time. I also really loved all the monsters they show in the show. I also thought that there's a lot of great action, especially in the third season, where we see a big shootout and people are just getting shot dead, like they're dropping like flies. But I already covered the good stuff in this show that I liked, that is spoiler. But now I want to talk about the stuff I didn't like, that is spoiler heavy as well. Now, here's the big problems. In season 1, I don't recall any problems I had with season 2, but season 1 was just one minor problem, and then season 2 had season 3, sorry. Season 3 was the one I had a few main problems with, but I'll get to that. Now, with season 1, I really did not like the whole random scene of Dorian Gray and Ethan just kissing for no reason. Why did they kiss? They never had any sexual tension between them, and it just felt completely random, and they never really bring it up, or it never really comes back. Again, I do say that Dorian Gray is used for filler when it's like, oh, what do we do now? We don't really have much time. Oh, we'll just cut to something with Dorian Gray. But the most problems I had with the show was the third and final season. Now, the minor one was Dr. Jekyll, played by Shandez Latif. I'm not 100% sure if I said that right. He's, Dr. Jekyll, but also the problem was, he's kind of there, so I'm like, okay, he's gonna be Mr. Hyde, but when they got the reveal of, oh, I inherited my father's estate. I should go by another name, Mr. Hyde. And I was like, are you kidding me? You dropped the ball big time on that. But the main problem I had with season 3 was the ending. The ending was just rushed. It's like they found out the last minute they were getting canceled, so like, okay, we gotta wrap things up in a very quick way, and I didn't like that. Shows like Banshee and Mad Men had much better endings because of the fact that they felt like endings that they were ended on a good note, but they felt like they ran their course. This show did not feel that way to me, and that's what really disappointed me about the show was the ending. So yeah, I mean, the show is definitely great. I would highly recommend it. It definitely has, some of probably Eva Green's best acting ever. We see, other good acting from other supporting cast members. But also, I would say that it did have, good plot twists. Although the scenes with Dorian Gray I felt like were just kind of just filler, and some characters like Dr. Jekyll was kind of wasted and kind of pointless too. But I will say is that this is definitely one of the best gothic horror shows of all time. So as for Penny Dreadful, I would give it about 4.5 stars out of 5. I probably would have gave it 5 stars out of 5 if it wasn't for the very iffy ending. But I did enjoy it regardless for all that it was worth. But on one final note, I mean, Eva Green was just snubbed for not winning or even getting nominated for most of the time for an Emmy for her acting in the show. She did get nominated for Best Actress at the Emmys, I think for the 3rd season, but she lost to that actress from Empire or something like that. It was such a really dumb decision, and award shows are definitely not perfect for their decision making. But anyway, this is Tyler from NK Reviews. Thank you for watching this episode of Unscripted. Please like and subscribe, and I hope to make more in the future. And bye.